The deans of the nation's top public health schools sent a letter to President Obama Monday condemning the CIA's use of a vaccination campaign trick in the hunt for Osama bin Laden. If you've been reading or the papers or watching television, you know that we are in the initial stages of a fairly severe wave of influenza. Pertussis is back. Whooping cough is almost out of control again. There are several strains of flu that are starting to really, really, really worry public health officials. Massachusetts seems to be one of the hardest hit areas. And of course, some of this stems from the fact that people still think you can go all autistic if you get vaccinated. I wonder when that will ever stop. I wonder when that's going to stop. Tens of thousands of cases of pertussis, which is, in a series of child vaccinations, DPT shot, that is a protection for that particular virus. But so many parents have been misled, and I'm not going to get into a big argument with you people who still believe that thimerosal or whatever the preservative is, the mercury preservative. I'm not saying mercury is good for anybody, but the additives or the preservatives in vaccines simply do not cause autism. For Christ's sake, I don't understand how people latched onto that. Well, I do understand why and how. Because of this freak from the UK who lied and put out a story a few years back, and parents desperate to find a reason why their children were developing or had developed this learning disability or this developmental problem, latched onto that like lamprey. And it's a shame, and my heart breaks for people who deal with autistic children, because it does put a strain on the family. It puts a strain on everything. But it is not from getting vaccinated, for God's sake. But a lot of people bought into that nonsense. So now we have a certain segment of the population out there that has not been vaccinated against some of these diseases. And the so-called, and I hate this term, herd protection, where if you have 1,000 people and 800 of them have been vaccinated, the chances of the other 200 getting ill are less than if nobody was vaccinated. That herd protection is missing for a certain segment of the population. More on this when we come back.
It has amused itself to death. Amused itself to death. We watched the tragedy of folks. We did as we were told, more than so. It was the greatest.
21 past the hour. I got all off on a tangent there about this vaccine issue that, to me, the thimerosal vaccine vaccinations causes my child to become autistic is the same level of intellectual understanding as the birther debate about Obama's birth certificate. I mean, it really is. But that's a topic I don't like to get into because I know a lot of people are deeply emotionally invested in that issue and just insist in the face of all evidence that vaccine preservatives cause autism, which is just madness to me. But anyway, the deans of the nation's top public health schools are really upset, and rightly so, because of the use of the vaccination campaign trick in the hunt for bin Laden. Measles was almost, polio, I think, one of the so-called childhood diseases that are devastating, was almost eliminated in Pakistan. And then the CIA got its filthy hands into this. They admitted hiring a Pakistani doctor to give out a hepatitis B vaccine, apparently in an effort to get DNA samples from the area that they suspected was bin Laden's hideout. Now, the result of that has been a severe backlash against vaccination in Pakistan. 9 polio vaccinators have been shot dead, and the effort to fight polio has stopped. Deaths from measles in 2012 in Pakistan went to 306. The year before it was 64. And resistance to measles vaccine, getting the vaccination, finding people to administer the vaccination is being blamed. I mean, when you start to use public health or the ability to receive public health treatment in a population that's desperately in need of it, when you start using that, and it isn't typically the CIA, when you start using that as a means of political and conflict and warfare, I mean, that's really getting down into the sewer, isn't it? Do you remember the stories from Vietnam? Was it true or was it another apocryphal story? I believe it was true. And it was used as a point in the movie Apocalypse Now. But you remember the stories of the Americans, the corpsmen, military corpsmen who would go into villages and vaccinate children against childhood diseases. And the so-called enemy, of course it was their country, their villages, their people, but the so-called enemy would come in after the medics had left and slice off the arms of the kids who had been vaccinated as a show of defiance. Now, is the story apocryphal? Is it true? Is it, the point, though, I think is obvious. And we condemned that, whether it was true or not. In the movie, it was condemned. It was condemned when Lieutenant or Captain, who was it that went after General or Major? I'm forgetting all the names. It was Charlie Sheen. His character went after the Marlon Brando. What were their names? You remember? Kirk, Captain Kirk? No, that's Star Trek. But the horror of that was demonstrated by the faces of Charlie Sheen's face when Kurtz, when Major Kurtz, whatever, when Willard, Captain Willard went after Major Colonel Kurtz. There we go. Thank you, Kathy. But the shock of that and the horror of that, of lopping off the arms of the kids, whether the story was true or not, it registered on Captain Willard's face. And now our CIA, well, of course, it was more important to track down bin Laden. So, mass death as unintended consequence of our oh-so-slick Central Intelligence Agency. Not only the administrators of these vaccines, public health people, who are being shot dead, being executed on the streets, and to a large extent these are women, shot down, blown up, but also the people that die because the vaccines are not presented to them, and the kids develop these diseases and die. Way to go, CIA. One more example of the horror that the Central Intelligence Agency, you talk about a misnamed group of assassins, that the Central Intelligence Agency wages against civilian populations. It's just astonishing.